We'll start in a minute. Let the students join. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Baiju's Exam Prep. Today is lecture 2 of Indian Polity. What did we discuss yesterday? The significance of Indian polity for the civil services examination, because this subject is relevant for all the stages of this exam: prelims, mains, essay, and the personality test. What do we have to cover in Indian polity? Basically, three broad themes. One, the Constitution of India. Second, the laws passed by the legislature. Third, various judicial verdicts, various judicial pronouncements. Laws and judicial verdicts which are in the news or which happened over the past 1.5 years. That should be our focus area. And what are the sources that you should follow? These class lectures plus Lakshmikant for your prelims exam plus newspaper. Link the three together and you're all set for the mains examination, because Lakshmikant is not going to be of any help for the mains exam. For prelims, Lakshmikant and the class notes. For mains, Lakshmikant, class notes plus newspaper. That should be more than enough. But if you have got time, then please go through the two NCERT books that I recommended yesterday. Done? Then we looked at what is the Constitution. Constitution is the supreme law of land which enjoys special legal sanctity. And it is this Constitution which allocates areas, roles to various organs of the state. In a sense, what is the role of the executive? What is the role of the judiciary? What is the role of the legislature? It is basically a rule book which tells us how this country is to be governed. What sort of polity do we need to have in this country? Then we discussed that a constitution can be of two types. It can be a written constitution or it can be an unwritten constitution. But that is not too important for our exam. What is more important is whether a constitution is unitary or the constitution is federal. What are the features of a unitary constitution? What are the features of the federal constitution? That's something that we discussed yesterday. And I told you that there is no specific definition of what is a federal constitution. Then what do the constitutional experts do? They look at the constitution of a country and compare it with the constitution of the United States of America. If it matches, then it's a federal constitution, because we say US constitution is the oldest federal constitution of the world. But what about India? We say India is a case of sui generis. Some say it is something unique which we haven't seen anywhere in the world. It's a beautiful mix of some unitary features, some federal features. And that is why some experts say that the best term that we can use for Indian constitution is that the Indian constitution is quasi-federal. Then we discuss some other important concepts. For example, the theory of separation of powers, which has been attributed to French philosopher Montesquieu. We looked at the doctrine of checks and balances. And towards the end, we looked at constitutionalism. Clear? And we also discussed how constitutionalism can be worked around in India. The rule of law, popular sovereignty is with the people, separation of powers, individual rights, independent judiciary, so on and so forth. But this was only an introduction. We will now dig deeper into the Constitution, and some of the themes which we did not touch yesterday, we will touch over a period of time. For example, we need to understand what is a transformative constitution. Can we employ the constitution to transform the society? Something that we have witnessed in South Africa. And there have been numerous Supreme Court judgments. Navtej Singh Johar judgment, Joseph Shine judgment, Shabri judgment, various judgments which we will discuss throughout the course of these lectures, where the Supreme Court has said that the power of the Indian Constitution, the role of the Indian Constitution is not just to tell us the way in which the polity is governed in India. The power of the Constitution is also to transform the society. Transform the society in the sense, how can we ensure that LGBTQ community, they also have the right to love, despite the fact that society may not be too accepting this idea of a same-sex relationship. But you can use this constitution to transform the society. It may not happen now, but it may happen over a period of time. How constitution can be used to transform the society, that we will discuss towards the end of these lectures. But now let's jump to the preamble of the constitution, because our constitution begins with the preamble. And what is this preamble? It's basically the philosophy of the constitution. For example, if you give me bribe to do something for you or your family or for your business, I may not accept this. Why? Because I'll tell you, this is not my philosophy. I'm brutally honest. For example, this is just an assumption. I may not be. I'm brutally honest. I will not take money to get things done for you. That's my philosophy. That's philosophy of an educational institute, maybe a very good institute, a very good school or a college or a university, is to impart quality education. They will not compromise on the quality education. They may compromise on infrastructure, but other areas, but not on the quality education. Why? Because that is their philosophy. That's their core belief. Look at the Indian Constitution. 12 schedules are there in the Constitution, 25 parts are there in the Constitution, more than 444 articles are there in the Constitution. But if you don't want to read the entire Constitution, but you want to understand the essence of this Constitution, what do? Do you have to read articles one by one to understand what is the basic crux of Indian Constitution? No. If you want to understand the basic idea behind the Indian Constitution, all you have to do, look at this beautiful text known as the preamble. So preamble is nothing but the philosophy of the Constitution. You may not understand this yet. Let me make it even simpler. For example, you read a book, a novel, for example. It starts with the preface. What does this preface tell you? There is a preface to a book. This preface gives you insights into what this book is all about. Not just this. This preface gives you insights into the writer as well. Listen to me carefully. You want to read a novel, starts with the preface. When you look at the preface, even if you don't read the entire book, you will get an idea, a strong idea, a very core idea of what this book is all about, what this novel is all about, only by reading the preamble, only by reading the preface. Similarly, if you want to have an idea of what is the basic philosophy of the Indian Constitution, you may not be able to read the entire Constitution. Just go through the preamble, you will understand the philosophy. But not just this. It will also give you insights into the minds of those who drafted this Constitution. For example, if the Constitution, if the preamble talks about liberty, equality, dignity, justice, so on and so forth, you may safely assume that all those members of the Constituent Assembly who drafted our constitution, they were the believers of equality. They were the believers of justice. They were the believers of dignity. Otherwise, they would not have mentioned these terms in the constitution in the first place. So just like preface to a book gives you insights into the book, gives you a basic idea of what the book is all about, and at the same time gives you an idea, unlocks the minds of those who wrote this book. In a similar fashion, preamble is the philosophy of the Constitution, gives you insight into what the Constitution is all about, and also unlocks the minds of the makers who wrote this Constitution. Supreme Court has said in various judgments that preamble is basically, in a nutshell, if you want to ask what does preamble contain, preamble contains the ideals and the aspirations of the Constitution. What do we want to achieve through this Constitution? That's mentioned in the preamble, which we will discuss in great detail today. What is the aspiration of this new country that this new country wants to achieve through this Constitution? That is mentioned in the preamble. So preamble is basically all the lofty goals that we see in our Constitution, whether it is of justice, dignity, liberty, equality, so on and so forth. All these goals that we want to achieve through this Constitution, those goals are contained in the preamble. And in Berubari Union case, 1960, the Supreme Court said this preamble is a key to unlock the mind of the makers of the Constitution. And this is a question which was once asked in the prelims exam. Which of the following can be viewed as a key to unlock the minds of the makers of the Constitution? If you want to understand the thought process of what was going on in the minds of those who drafted this Constitution, for that, you only have to take a look at the preamble of the Indian Constitution. So let me repeat. What is preamble? It's like the philosophy of the Constitution of India. And what is that philosophy? If you want to understand what are we trying to achieve through this Constitution, because let's understand, if the members of the Constituent Assembly came together to write the Constitution, they must have an objective in mind. That through this Constitution, what is it that we are trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve a society where caste inequality will be reduced, where income inequality will be reduced, where there will be no discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth? Are we trying to achieve and realize a society where every single individual will be given dignity? Are we trying to achieve a society where the society will help the poor, the downtrodden, the weaker sections of the society? Are we trying to ensure a society where scientific temper would be developed? What is it that we try to achieve through this Constitution? All those ideals, all those lofty goals, all those aspirations are contained in the preamble. And when we look at the preamble, we just don't look at the text. We may also understand the thought process which was going on in the minds of the makers of the Constitution. But this preamble is based on the objectives resolution which was moved by Pandit Nehru in the Constituent Assembly and ultimately adopted by the Constituent Assembly on the 22nd of January 1947. Objectives resolution. Constituent Assembly. And what is that body? You will discuss this in great detail in modern India when modern history would be covered. Members were nominated to the Constituent Assembly so that these members can draft the Constitution of India. They met for the first time on the 9th of December 1946. And over a period of 2.5 years, they worked very hard, toiled to enact a constitution for this country. But the members of the Constituent Assembly had to do what? Write the constitution. What should be the objective of this constitution that we are trying to write, that we are trying to enact, that we are trying to adopt? Pandit Nehru went to the Constituent Assembly, introduced a resolution that this should be the objective of the constitution. What is that objective? We should have a secular polity. What is the objective? Objective should be all the problems of the world can be solved through talks, through diplomacy, through peaceful means. We don't have to resort to war. There should be equality, there should be freedom of speech and expression, there should be liberty to say whatever you want to say. My dear members of the Constituent Assembly, this is what should be the objective of this constitution. Members of the Constituent Assembly accepted this and said this is a very good thing to do. We accept this objectives resolution, which was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on the 22nd of January 1947. And then the same objectives resolution, with some changes in wording, became the preamble to the Constitution. So we can say this preamble is based on the objectives resolution moved by Pandit Nehru and adopted by the Constituent Assembly on the 22nd of January 1947. The objective resolution, with some changes in their words, syntax, became the preamble to the Constitution of India. And now let's look at what this preamble is all about. Look at this beautiful text. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social justice, economic justice, political justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, assuring the dignity of an individual. When we look at this preamble, we can break this preamble for our understanding for the civil services examination into 4 broad themes. In a sense, first, it says we the people of India. Second, it talks about these terms: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Then it talks about something like justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, so on and so forth. And then it mentions a date, 26th of November 1949. Let's look at all these 4 themes one by one. The first is we the people. The constitution that we are writing, this constitution derives its authority from whom? From the people of India. What does that mean? This constitution is not the gift of United Nations. This constitution is not the gift of United States. This constitution is not the gift of United Kingdom. This constitution is not the gift of any foreign power. This constitution is given to the people of this country by themselves. Indians were there, part of the Constituent Assembly. And on behalf of the millions of the people of this country, they came together to draft and write the constitution of this newly independent India. So this constitution is the gift of the people of this country to themselves. So this constitution, whatever its authority is, the source of that authority are the people of this country. What is the source of my authority? I come from Byju's. That's why I'm teaching right in front of you. What is the source of authority that a police officer gets? He or she may be holding an important post in the police department. And from that department, that is the source of your authority. The source of your authority may be the chair that you're holding or occupying. But this constitution, what is the source of its authority? How can we say that everybody should respect this? How can we say that everybody has to adhere to this constitution? How can we say that everybody has to swear by this constitution and follow the spirit of this constitution? Because the source of its authority are the people. And in democracy, people are the ultimate sovereign. Ultimate sovereign in the sense, we don't like a particular government, we will throw this government out after 5 years. We may like this particular government and we will vote for this government back after 5 years. Ultimate power is with the people. They can make a government, they can change a government, they can vote somebody into power, they can throw somebody out of power. The ultimate power is with the people. And it is the same set of people who have given themselves the constitution. Which means, if at all constitution has the authority, what is the source of that authority? What is the source from which the constitution derives its power, authority? That's the people of India. We, the people of India. And then we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Do you know this guy? Yes, I do. This guy is very calm. This guy is shy. This woman is very brave. What is this? This is the nature of an individual. By nature, I am shy, for example. By nature, I'm very polite. By nature, I'm very forgiving. By nature, I'm very forgetful. So that's the nature of an individual. That's the nature of the society. What is the nature of the Indian state? It should be sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. And I will explain all these 5 phrases one by one, but in a moment. But the most important thing that you need to keep in mind is that all these terms are in capital letters. All these terms are in capital letters and there is no comma separating sovereign from socialist, socialist from secular, secular from democratic, democratic from republic. Which means you don't have to look at these terms in isolation. It is sovereign and socialist and secular and democratic and republic. No, it is one and the same. You can't separate one from the other. You have to look at this phrase in its totality. Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. This is one term. And what is the implication of that? We will discuss in a moment. But first, what are we discussing? This beautiful text, preamble, we the people of India. For the civil services examination, we can break it down into 4 themes, 4 broad areas. First, it tells us what is the source of authority of this constitution. If this constitution is the sacred document of India, where does it derive its authority from? From the people of India. Second, it tells us about the nature of the Indian state, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Third, it also tells us about the objectives of the constitution. Because what is preamble after all? It is a document which reflects the ideals and the aspirations of the constitution. Through this constitution, what is it that we try to achieve and want to achieve? And what is it that we want to achieve? Justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, dignity of an individual. All these are the objectives of the constitution. That's theme number 3. And theme number 4, the date of adoption. What do we mean by date of adoption? The constitution, it was ready on 26th of November 1949. Constituent Assembly, which met for the first time on the 9th of December 1946, worked very hard over a period of 2.5 years. And finally, this constitution was ready on the 26th of November 1949. Clear? But this constitution was enacted. It entered into force on 26th January 1950. This is known as the date of enactment. And 26th November 1949 is celebrated now as the Constitution Day, and 26th January 1950, you would know, celebrated as the Republic Day. But sir, what's the difference? Do you read newspapers? Yes, sir. Recently, a landmark bill was passed by both houses of the Indian Parliament. What was that bill? Women's reservation. Reservation for women in Lok Sabha, in state legislative assemblies. When was this bill passed? It was passed this year in 2023. But when this bill would enter into force? When do we see women's reservation really implemented in India? After 2029. We will discuss this in women's reservation. I don't see this happening even in 2034. But be that as it may, that means although the bill has been passed, but this will enter into force once delimitation would be carried out. This would enter into force when the census would be carried out. So this is a long process. That means you may have adopted a bill today, but you will implement this after a while. Similarly, Constitution was adopted on 26th of November 1949, but it was enacted, it entered into force, it got implemented few months later on 26th January 1950. But why? There is a story behind this. There is history to this. And that is thanks to or because of Pandit Nehru. Why Pandit Nehru? Look at the colonial period when India was struggling for her independence. In 1885, an important organization was born known as the Indian National Congress. A.O. Hume, over a period of time, Dadabhai Naoroji, Surendranath Banerjee, and others, W.C. Banerjee, so on and so forth. But initially, what was the role of the Congress, Indian National Congress? They did not want complete independence, which you will study in modern history. They were basically asking for reforms. Reforms in the sense, more and more Indians should be made part of the legislature. More and more Indians should be made to write the civil services examination so that Indians can become the Indian civil servants. And over a period of time, the demand of the Congress party was some sort of self-rule. Self-rule known as Swaraj or home rule. Something that Lokmanya Tilak, Annie Besant, they spoke of. Home rule or self-rule or Swaraj. When Lokmanya Tilak said, Swaraj is my birthright and I must have it, he was not talking of complete independence. He was talking of home rule. Home rule in the sense, ultimate power will be with the Queen of England. We don't want to come out of the control of the Queen. But please allow us, despite the fact that we will be part of the British Empire, please allow Indians to make laws for the people themselves. Ultimate sovereignty will be with the Queen. Ultimate power will be with the Queen. But please allow us, for our day-to-day activities, allow us to make laws for the people of India. But over a period of time, left wing became very powerful in Congress. those who were critical of the old members of the Congress party. And this left bloc was led by Pandit Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, and others. A historic session was held in the aftermath of the Simon Commission. Simon Commission came to India in 1927. All these things you may have or you will discuss in modern history. Simon Commission, the very task of the Simon Commission was to see if Indians can be allowed to make laws for themselves, whether Indians are fit to make laws for their own members. But there was no Indian part of the Simon Commission. So a commission which was responsible to check and see if Indians can make laws for themselves, there was no Indian on this panel of Simon Commission. Ultimately, it was boycotted. There were protests, and Lala Lajpat Rai also unfortunately passed away in these protests. It was at this juncture that people thought in the Congress party that we should give a final ultimatum to the British government that we need complete independence. But then there were old members of the Congress party who said, no, not now. Let's not antagonize the British. They will kill you, or they will do this, they will do that. We will ask for home rule. We will ask for Swaraj, or we will ask for dominion status. Which means India will be the dominion of the British Empire, will be under the control of the British Empire. But Indians will make laws for themselves, Indians will elect themselves, and will make laws for their day-to-day activities. Members of the left wing of this Congress, Subhash Chandra Bose, Pandit Nehru, they were not happy with this. But they ultimately went with the old guard, supported the old guard, but said 1 year. If in 1 year the British government is not giving you dominion status, then don't interfere with our line of thinking. We will ask for complete independence. We will no longer be satisfied with dominion status or self-rule or home rule or Swaraj. And in 1929, a historic session of the Indian National Congress was held at Lahore. It was then an undivided India. Lahore was part of India. Indian National Congress session at Lahore in 1929, and a resolution was passed. This resolution called for Purna Swaraj. Complete independence. The president of this Lahore session of Indian National Congress was Pandit Nehru. And under the presidentship of Pandit Nehru, a resolution was passed calling for complete independence of India. And for the first time, on 26th January 1930, Independence Day was celebrated. This was only for optics, although we did not get independence on that day, but this was just to fuel, to ignite the passions among the people, to give them confidence that independence is just around the corner. 26th January 1930, Independence Day was celebrated and the Indian flag was hoisted. So this date, 26th January, was very close to Pandit Nehru, because this was when the first Independence Day was celebrated, after the Lahore Declaration, after the Purna Swaraj resolution. So Pandit Nehru asked the members of the Constituent Assembly that since it is 26 November 1949, the Constitution is ready, but can we postpone the implementation, enactment of this Constitution by some days so that we can enact this Constitution. If we could not get independence on 26 January, at least let's enact the Constitution, give Constitution the force on 26 January 1950, so that this date, which is very significant in our history, is etched into the memory of all the Indians. And perhaps he was right. That's why we are discussing it today. Otherwise, we would not be possibly discussing the 26th January 1930 when the first Independence Day was celebrated. So, although the Constitution was adopted on 26 November 1949, which we now celebrate as the Constitution Day, but it was implemented on 26th of January 1950. And that day is celebrated as the Republic Day. And there is a history to that. For that, you need to go back to the Lahore Declaration of 1929. So, this text preamble, it talks about four things. One, what is the source of authority of this constitution? From where does the constitution derive its authority from? We, the people of India. Second, what should be the nature of the Indian state? Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. What are the objectives of the constitution? Liberty, equality, fraternity, dignity of an individual. And finally, the date on which the constitution was adopted, which is 26th day of November 1949. So theme 1 and theme 4 we have discussed. Now we will discuss theme 2nd and theme 3rd. Let's look at all these natures one by one. But if you have got any questions, please let me know. Any questions? Clear, clear, clear. Okay. What is the nature of the Indian state? First, it is sovereign. Sovereign in the sense, when we passed women's reservation bill in the parliament, did we seek the permission of United Nations before that? When we passed the three farm laws, did we ask United States whether we can pass such laws or not? When we implement a policy, for example, on Ukraine, we had a beautiful foreign policy. We neither took sides nor did we antagonize anybody. In a sense, Russia is an aggressor, invaded Ukraine, but we implemented a delicate balance where we said that the solution to this problem is talks, diplomacy, negotiation. War is not a solution. Without antagonizing Russia, without appearing that we are taking the side of the Ukraine. And when we took this decision, when we took the stand, did we seek the permission of Britain or other countries or European Union or NATO? We did not. That means we are sovereign. Sovereign in the sense we can make or unmake any decision without any interference by any other country. Prior to our independence, were we sovereign? No. Because it was the foreign power, an alien power, the Britain, which was taking decisions on our behalf. So that means the nature of the Indian state is that it has to be, it will be forever and ever sovereign. It can take any decision, it can unmake any decision without any interference by any other country. That's the independent power that this country has, sovereignty. But then you might be asking, or you might wonder, sir, India is also part of WTO. What is WTO? World Trade Organization. And this WTO is imposing some restrictions. Restrictions in the sense, you cannot be giving subsidies above this particular point. You cannot be storing the food items beyond this particular point. You cannot stock these food items. and there are so many subsidy boxes, amber box, blue box, whatever these boxes are, then how can we say that we are sovereign? Because if we violate these directives of the WTO, sanctions can be imposed on us. So if sovereignty means that we can take any decision, we can unmake any decision without any interference by any foreign country, without any interference by any foreign organization, just the fact that we are part of WTO, which imposes restrictions, which dictates us what to do when it comes to agricultural subsidy, whether you can provide diesel subsidy to the farmers or not, whether you can provide electricity subsidy to the farmers or not, whether you can stockpile your food grains or not, whether you can give urea as subsidy or not, then how can we say we are independent? But listen to me carefully. We have joined WTO out of our own free will. And once you join an organization, you have to abide by the rules of that organization, because you have accepted those rules. But at any point in time, we can come out of WTO as well. So despite the fact that India is part of WTO, we are still sovereign, because we joined WTO out of our own free will, and we can come out of WTO as well. Are you independent to take a decision? Yes. You are independent to take a decision. You went to a restaurant. That's your independent decision. But inside the restaurant, there is a big board which says no smoking. You're not allowed to smoke. Does that mean you're not independent to take a decision for yourself because the restaurant is dictating terms for you? No, you entered that restaurant out of your own free will. And if you see that board and it is not acceptable to you, you will come out of it and join another restaurant where there is an open display, smoke here. Whatever the case may be, sovereign is the nature of the Indian state, which means Indian state can make any decision, can unmake any decision, can join an organization, can come out of an organization out of its own free will. There can be no interference by any other country. That is sovereignty. So the first nature of the Indian state is sovereign. Second, democratic. Why second, democratic? Because this term socialist, secular, and integrity, these were the three items which got added to the Constitution through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. In the preamble, till 1976, these terms, socialist, secular, integrity, these were not mentioned. It was only when Srimati Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, Parliament enacted another constitutional amendment. That means Constitution was amended for the 42nd time, and these terms got added: socialist, secular, integrity. That is why when the new Parliament complex was started, when they used the new Parliament complex for the first time, and then the copies of the preamble were given to the members of the Parliament, the opposition said that this is not the updated preamble. Why? Because the words socialist, secular, integrity were missing from the preamble, because these words were added later in 1976. So the nature of the Indian state is, one, sovereign, second, democratic. And what is democracy? As Abraham Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, for the people. Listen to me carefully. I told you the nature of an individual. I may be shy, I may be forgiving, I may be forgetful, I may be calm, I may be angry. That's my nature. But the members of the Constituent Assembly who were writing the Constitution for India, they also had to talk about what sort of government do we have to implement in India. There can be an option of monarchy. Maybe we need a king. There can be a question of one party rule, just like in China. Communist Party is ruling forever and ever and ever. But the members of the Constituent Assembly said that this preamble or this constitution, which is the gift of the people to themselves, because it begins with we the people. Since this constitution is the gift of the people to themselves, we need to give power back to the people. And what is that power back to the people? You and me can contest elections and be the members of the parliament and the state legislatures. You and me can become ministers. You and me can become prime ministers or the presidents. So democracy is the form of government that we chose for ourselves. Because in democracy, there is equal participation of all the people in building this country, in building the society, in building the country. And that is what Supreme Court said. In R.C. Podial versus Union of India, 1994, Supreme Court said democracy denotes people's power. What is the power of the people? We did not agree with this government when the government is saying Bharat Uday, India shining in 2004. We voted this government out of power and brought in a new government in 2004. Disliked this government in 2014, brought in another government. Liked this government in 2019, voted this government back to power in 2019. Now you will have to decide what you want to do in 2024. That's the power of the people. So democracy denotes people's power and equal participation of all citizens in polity. Nobody can stop you from contesting the election. Whether you can win or not, that's the separate matter altogether. But nobody can stop you from contesting the election. So democracy is a form of government by the people, of the people, for the people. And that is another nature of Indian state. We will never be dictatorship regime. We will never turn into a monarchy. We will never turn into a one-party rule. We will always remain a democracy because that has been told by our constitution makers that that is another nature of Indian state. One, we have to be independent, sovereign, to take any decision, to unmake any decision. Second, we have to be democratic. Third, republic. What do we mean by republic? Britain, for example, is Britain a republic? Is Britain a democracy? Yes, it is. Is Britain a sovereign? Yes, it is. Is Britain a republic? No. Why? Because we say Britain is constitutional monarchy. India is a republic. What does that mean? In Britain, who is the head of state? In Britain, it is the king. In India, who is the head of the state? President. Head of the state is the president. The first citizen of India is the president. Why? What are the powers of the president? We'll discuss that when we will start Union Executive chapter, where we will discuss president, prime minister, council of ministers, the cabinet committees, the attorney general for India, so on and so forth. This king, is he elected in Britain? No. The king is holding this office because of heredity. Queen Elizabeth passed away, now King Charles. After that, King Williams. After that, son, daughter, and this goes on, continues forever and ever and ever. India is a republic because the head of the state, who is the president of India, is not a hereditary position. It is an elected office. Srimati Draupadi Murmu, she was elected by the people of India. Sir, how was Srimati Draupadi Murmu elected by the people of India? We did not vote. But you voted for your MPs in Lok Sabha. You voted for your MLAs in the Legislative Assembly. And these MLAs of the Legislative Assembly, these MPs of the Lok Sabha, they voted to elect President Draupadi Murmu. So the president is elected by the people, but not directly. You don't directly vote to elect the president of India. You elect the president of India indirectly through your representatives, whom you have got elected to the Legislative Assembly and the Lok Sabha. Prior to Srimati Draupadi Murmu, we had Mr. Ramnath Kovind as the president. Prior to that, we had Pranab Mukherjee as the president. Prior to that, we had Pratibha Devi Singh Patil as the president. Prior to that, we had Mr. APJ Abdul Kalam as the president, so on and so forth. That means tomorrow, can the daughter of Srimati Draupadi Murmu become the president of India? Yes. But not because she is the daughter of the president. She may get elected to the office of the president of India. And that is what we mean by republic. Republic means the head of the state is elected. And it is not a hereditary monarch, just like in England. That is why we say in England, do they have a constitution? Yes. Although it's an unwritten constitution, but they have a constitution. But they are a democracy. They are a sovereign country. But they are not republic because the head of the state, the king, is not an elected individual. He's holding that office because of his descent, hereditary connection. So we say Britain is a case of constitutional monarchy. It has a constitution, but it is a monarchy. India is a case of constitutional republic because we have a constitution and the head of the state is an elected individual. But that's not the only thing that republic term denotes. This office of the President of India is open for anybody. Do we say that the president only has to be a male and not a female? No, we never say that. Do we say that this president should only be from North India and not South India? Do we say that this president should be from a particular racial group? This president cannot be a tribal. This president has to be part of the mainstream India. Do we say that this president should be of a particular religion? Can only be a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Sikh? No. That means this office of president, this office of the head of the state, is an elected office, and at the same time this office is open for all without any discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, so on and so forth. That is what we call republic. So what is the nature of the Indian state? One, it is sovereign, it is democratic, it is republic. And third, fourth, socialist. And socialist, you would know, I told you it was not originally part of the constitution, part of the preamble. It was added to the preamble in the year 1976 by way of 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. But what is the socialist? For that, we need to understand what is the Karl Marx's concept of socialism. Listen to me carefully. Karl Marx, the most influential philosopher of all time. If you read philosophy, you have to read Marx. If you read sociology, you have to read Marx. If you read economics, you have to read Marx. If you read history, you have to read Marx. If you read political science, you have to read Marx. If you read anything, you have to read Marx. Such is the influence of Karl Marx on various disciplines in the world. Karl Marx said that there is something known as the cyclical nature of history. And what is that cyclical nature of history? We started off with primitive communism. If you are a student of sociology, you have to understand this in great detail. But we are not discussing sociology, we're discussing GS. So we will discuss this briefly so that you understand what socialism is. According to Marx, when the history started, when the society started, that was the phase of primitive communism, old communism. Communism in the sense, you, me, all of us, we were occupying this land. For example, there was no such thing as private property. It was not that this small piece of land belongs to me, this small piece of land belongs to you, this small piece of land belongs to you. No. This entire land was communal land. Communal is not a negative term only. Communal land in the sense that this land belongs to the entire community. Whatever was sown on this land, for example, a crop, and whatever was produced, that was equally distributed amongst all the members of the society. So it was a beautiful society. Beautiful society where nobody was rich, nobody was poor. Beautiful society where there was equality. Everybody was given equal share of this crop, of this produce. That was the beauty. A completely egalitarian society, according to Karl Marx. Egalitarian in the sense, a completely equal society, where there was no rich, there was no poor. Where there was no upper class, there was no lower class. Everybody was equal because this entire land belongs to everybody. Nobody is the private holder of this land. But Karl Marx says, over a period of time, this society got destroyed. And then we entered into a society known as ancient society. And Karl Marx says it is from this very moment that classes emerged in the society. And Karl Marx says there are only two classes which emerge in a society: haves, have nots. Basically, a complete reverse of an egalitarian, equalitarian society. Now, this is a deeply unequal society. Karl Marx says in ancient society there are two classes: masters and slaves. Masters and slaves in the sense that when this land was a communal land, everybody was the equal holder of this land. Some people, they became masters, took others as slaves and confiscated their property. So now emerged two classes: haves, masters, slaves, have-nots. And over a period of time, even this ancient society got changed, and this ancient society then shifted to a feudal society. And in feudal society also, there are two classes: landlords, serfs. And according to Marx, when technology changes, when means of production changes, there is a change in the society. And what is that change in the society? Very briefly here. Karl Marx, or I will add this on a different slide here so that you are not confused. Karl Marx talks about base structure hypothesis. What is that base structure hypothesis? This is the base. And base is always economic. And then we have superstructures at the top. Superstructures, for example, family. Superstructure, for example, education. Superstructure can be anything, and this changes because of technology. How? According to Karl Marx, everything is determined by economy. That's what Bill Clinton said in the 1990s. It's all economy, stupid. Everything is based on economy. When economy changes, and economy changes when means of production changes, when technology changes. For example, when land was the primary source of revenue, when it got changed because we had industrial revolution. Industrial revolution happened because of the technology, when machines got invented. And ultimately, when economy changed, because from agrarian society we moved towards a capitalist society, where technology changed, where means of production changed, the superstructures also changed. Sir, what does that mean? That means, according to Karl Marx, number one, there is some cyclical nature of history. In the sense, we started off with primitive communism, where everybody was equal. There were no haves and have-nots. There were no masters and there were no slaves. Everybody was equal in the society. It was an equalitarian society. But then the society got destroyed, or society changed, and we entered into the ancient society, where there are now classes which emerge, masters and slaves. Even this ancient society changed, and we entered into the feudal society. And in feudal society, what is the source of revenue? What is the source of income? Land. And on this particular piece of land, there are landlords who don't work. Some people call them absentee landlords. They are absent from the land. They are playing golf. They're drinking wine, playing chess. But these are the workers who are working on these lands, tilling these lands. But what do they get? Peanuts. The real profit is controlled by these landlords. Landlords are becoming richer, and these serfs, these workers, these agricultural workers, they don't have lands and they are working for peanuts. Wide gulf between the rich and the poor. And Karl Marx says, after this feudal society, we entered into a capitalist society. And in capitalist society also, there are two classes. Because according to Karl Marx, after primitive communism, classes emerged, and there are always two classes, haves, have-nots. And in capitalist society, we have bourgeois, and we have the proletariat. Who are the bourgeois? Ambanis, Tatas, Birlas, Baijus. The owner, for example, they control the wealth. And who are the proletariat? Those who are working in these factories, working in these industries. And these workers are treated like slaves, according to Karl Marx. These workers, since they are given salary, they are made to believe that they have given up their life for these bourgeois, for these capitalist class. And Karl Marx saw the condition of these workers from very close quarters. Some were made to work for 18 to 20 hours a day, no medical insurance. Some workers even got their limbs cut because these conditions of work were very improper. There was no safety gear that was provided to these workers. And that is why Karl Marx in his Communist Manifesto said, workers of the world, Unite, unite, and let's overthrow this capitalist system. Because he saw the evils of capitalism from very close quarters. And according to Karl Marx, society changes when technology changes, when means of production changes. And that is why he say there is something known as base structure hypothesis. Base is always of economic. When economy changes, and how does economy change? When technology changes. For example, when land was the principal source of revenue, then technology was introduced. Machines got invented. When machines got invented, ultimately what happened? We shifted our society from feudal society to capitalist society, where industries got developed. And Karl Marx says whenever society changes, whenever this economy changes, superstructures at the top also change. Superstructure at the top, for example, family. How? When it was a feudal society, listen to me carefully. Beautiful application of mind by Karl Marx. When it was a feudal society, which basically means people will have to work on the agricultural field, because when you work on your fields, when you sow your crops, ultimately you get the produce. In feudal society, what was the sort of family? Joint family. Why joint family? Because more number of people in a family, less number of agricultural laborers you'd need, because you will be working in your fields. And the society was also patriarchal. In a sense, we need more men in the family, because more men means more hands. But when this feudal society changed, because economic base changed, we entered into a capitalist society. And in capitalism, you have to move to the cities. When you move to the cities, city life is costlier. So this family, joint family, the entire family cannot go to the city. So this joint family disappears, emerges a nuclear family. Husband, wife, their kids. They go to the city, they live there. Now we are in a hyper-capitalist society. And in this hyper-capitalist society, we see the disappearance of even a nuclear family. We see the emergence of something known as household. Household in the sense, a single member family, single parent family. We see the emergence of live-in relationships. Because whenever economic base changes, superstructure changes, family changes, education changes, politics changes, everything changes. But that is the domain of sociology. We will stop it there. We will come back to what Karl Marx said in a capitalist society. And you would know that society changes when technology changes, means of production changes. We entered into a capitalist society. There are two classes, haves, have-nots, bourgeois and proletariat. And these bourgeois, since they give salary to the proletariat, to the workers, they get a sense that we have got these workers as our slaves. They will do everything that we tell them to do. Karl Marx said this is the horrific society and we need to get rid of the society as soon as possible. All the workers of the world, unite, unite, and let's overthrow this capitalist system. So Karl Marx wanted a revolution. Karl Marx said we have to have a revolution, even if it's a bloody revolution. But we need to overthrow this capitalist system. And Karl Marx further said that for this to happen, religion should be destroyed. He was anti-religion. Why religion should be destroyed? Because he said religion is like the opium of the masses. Opium in the sense, according to Marx, all religions teach their followers that you will get something in the afterlife. You will get something in the afterlife. So even if we are poor here, we will be rich in the afterlife. So you get solace, you get comfort. You're being tortured by your bourgeois, by your capitalist founder, by your capitalist owner. You're tortured by this individual. But once you go back home, you pray to Lord and say, in the next life, please give me solace. So for this, Karl Marx says we will never enact a revolution, because these people who belong to religion, who embrace religion, they turn docile. They cannot revolt. We need to extract religion from their veins. Otherwise, they will not revolt, because they need to revolt to overthrow this capitalist system. And Karl Marx said religion makes poverty tolerable. How? Karl Marx says, look at the Christian hymn. It is easy for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the heaven. This is the needle which is used for stitching. On top of that needle, you see an eye. It's a very small hole. Christianity says, according to Karl Marx, that it is easy that a camel, big animal, can pass through the eye of this needle. It's very difficult, but that can happen. But it is not possible for a rich man to enter the heaven. So what is the religion teaching these workers, these members of the proletariat? This bourgeois will never enter the heaven. I will enter the heaven. So I am here for 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, 70 years. But after that, I will die and I will go to the heaven, where I will drink wine, where I'll have all the luxuries that I need to think of. But this bourgeois will never enter the heaven. In such an atmosphere, how will you revolt? How will the worker revolt? How will the revolution happen? Because the workers will feel we are here only for a few years. After that, we will live the eternal life in the afterlife, full of wines and glory. Why should we revolt? And that's why Karl Marx said religion should be destroyed, because it's the opium of the masses. It is used to opiate the masses. But be that as it may, Karl Marx said the capitalist society has led to so much income inequality. Rich are becoming richer, poor are remaining the poorer. During pandemic, when people lost their lives, lost their jobs as well, lost their salaries as well. Some salaries were halved, some salaries three-fourths were cut. There were few businessmen who reached the top of this wealth map. Rich becoming richer. And this gulf, according to Oxfam report, Oxfam is an organization which tracks the income inequality throughout the world, based on London. According to that report, 1% people control what other 99% people have. So there are only 1% people in the world who control the wealth of the 99% other people. Or should we say 99% of the wealth? Such is the income inequality. And for that, Karl Marx said this capitalist society should be destroyed. And this capitalist society can be destroyed, and we will enter into a stage of socialist society. What will happen in this socialist society? There will be no private property. What will happen in the socialist society? State will control everything. Bourgeois who have these factories and the industries, Karl Marx says once capitalist society is destroyed, state will become very powerful. Who is the state? Government. What will government do? Government will abolish private property. You have the private property, you have private industries, factories, corporations, banks, you have land. We will take over the entire property. Now I am the state, I am the custodian of the entire property of this country. Now what I will do? I will distribute it amongst the people. Distribution of wealth will take place. So Ambani's wealth will be distributed amongst the people. Adani's wealth will be distributed amongst the people. Your wealth will be distributed amongst the people. By whom? By the state. It may be possible that this distribution will take some time. It may be possible that this distribution may not be quick, but this will happen when the state will take over the entire property, and slowly and steadily, the rich, their income comes down, because we are now lifting the income of the poor. It will come down, come down, come down, come down, and then ultimately we will reach a place where there is equality in the society. When there is equality in the society, does this remind you of everything? An old society, primitive communism. And Karl Marx says, then we will enter into communism. That's why Karl Marx said there is a cyclical nature of history. We started off with primitive communism. Then we entered into the ancient society. Then we entered into the feudal society. Then we entered into the capitalist society. Then we may enter into a socialist society. And in this socialist society, what will happen? The government controls everything, and government starts distributing to the people. But once this process is complete, we enter into communism, where everybody is equal. What will happen to the state? Listen to me carefully. What was the role of the state in socialism? To distribute wealth. Now that the government has played its role, has performed its duty, its job of distributing wealth, now we don't need even the government, according to Marx. We don't need even the state, according to Marx. And that is why in communism, Karl Marx states, state will wither away. State will disappear, government will disappear. We don't need the government at all. There will be people's rule. And this is where Karl Marx marries Mahatma Gandhi. Not literally, in the sense their ideas converge. What is Karl Marx's concept of communism? That's Mahatma Gandhi's concept of Ram Rajya, where there is no government required, no state required. A state-less society, a government-less society. Communism. 1976, when Constitution was amended, 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, this term socialist was added to the Constitution. It raised a lot of eyebrows at that time. Madam Gandhi, you're the Prime Minister. You have got the Parliament to enact this law. Now the preamble is amended. Now socialist is one of the nature of the Indian state. Are you trying to say that from now onwards there will be no private property? Are you now trying to say that from now onwards state will control everything? Are you now trying to say that we will come to a point where even the state is not required because we will enter into communism? Indira Gandhi said, I have my own definition of socialism. She was asked, Madam Gandhi, what is your definition of socialism? She did not elaborate. She did not answer. Can the Constitution of India talk about socialism in the way Karl Marx spoke of socialism? Constitutional experts say no. What is this socialism then, which our Constitution is talking about? Constitutional experts say it is Fabian socialism. Some people say it is Gandhian socialism. What is Fabian socialism? What did Karl Marx say? That this capitalist society should be destroyed so that we have a socialist society. That's what Karl Marx said. And how can we transition from a capitalist society to a socialist society? For that, there needs to be a revolution. All the workers of the world unite. Fabian socialism is one school of thought in London. They say, look at the objective, don't look at the means. What is the objective? The objective is to minimize the gulf between the rich and the poor. That's what you're saying. The objective is that the rich should not become richer and poor remain poorer. That should not happen. That's what you're saying. Yes. For that, we don't need revolution. If Karl Marx says we need to transition from a capitalist society to a socialist society, and for that the workers of the world will have to unite and overthrow the system through revolution, why do we need revolution? Instead, let government do this. Without a bloody revolution, where the blood will be spilled on the streets, why can't government come into the picture and provide some benefits to the poor, to the downtrodden sections of the society, to the marginalized sections of the society, and lift them? Scholarships, pensions, old age pension, free education, free food, whatever is required, so that we can lift them from their current status. That means government will be used instead of a revolution. So the socialism that is mentioned in our constitution is similar to this. We are not saying the private property of the Adanis, Ambani's and Tatas will be confiscated. No, that is where welfare capitalism comes into the picture. We will take FDI. We will impose taxes on the rich. And whatever money is generated, we will give it to the poor. Free bus ride for all the women in Karnataka. Scholarships for the students. Free food. Free education. Similarly, some of the health insurance schemes. So whatever we get through capitalism, we will start spending it on the weaker sections of the society, poor, marginalized sections of the society. Who will spend this? Government. And that is what people say. This is socialism in India. Role of the government will always be there to minimize the income inequality. And that is what Supreme Court has also said in DS Nakara versus Union of India. What is socialism in India? It indicates incorporation of a philosophy, of an idea, that we need to eliminate inequality in income, in status, and the standards of life. That is the objective of that is the nature of the Indian state. That we need to minimize, eradicate, eliminate the inequality, whether it is inequality of income, whether it is inequality of status, whether it is inequality of the standard of living. We need to eliminate that, and that is socialism in India. The socialism in India is not something that Karl Marx spoke of, where even the government will disappear, will wither away after some time. No. So the preamble, it talks about four things. We, the people of India, which means what is the source of authority of the constitution? People of India. Fourth, it talks about the date on which the constitution was adopted. Second, it talks about the nature of the Indian state. And what is the nature of the Indian state? It will be sovereign. It will be socialist. It will be democratic. It will be republic. And the last thing, it will be secular. What is secularism? Anybody? Don't write like this in the exam. I asked what is secularism, and majority of the students are writing no religion. What does that mean? Okay. When we look at Europe, There was a time when church, which is a religious institution, was deeply involved in the affairs of the state. Church gets to decide what should be the economic policy, what should be the education policy, what should be the family policy. Church gets to decide everything. Then came the period of Renaissance. And in that period, we saw some beautiful concepts emerged in Europe. And one such concept was secularism. And in simple terms, secularism means separation of church from the matters of the state. In simple terms, state, which means the government, for example, they will decide what should be the foreign policy, what should be the economic policy, whether we need FDI or not, whether we need FII or not, whether we need to liberalize our economy or not. The state gets to decide the social policy, the laws. The church would not interfere at all. Church, you only deal with your religious matters. Don't interfere in the affairs of the state. That's what Jagjit Singh once sang. Mujhko kadam kadam pe bhatakne do waizo. Let me swing here and there after I'm drunk. Oh, the preachers of the religion. Tum apna karobar karo. Main nashe mein hu. Those who don't understand Hindi, I'm sorry, but I will translate and try to translate. You do your business. You do your dhanda. I will be in high spirits. So it's just similar to that. State will do its own job, own policies. The church would be separate. You deal with your religious matters. Do whatever you want to do. We will not interfere in your affairs. You don't interfere in our affairs. That's secularism. But the kind of secularism that we see in different parts of the world also varies. For example, secularism in France is slightly different. There was a time when the hijab was banned in Paris, in France. Why? On the streets. At your home, if you want to wear hijab, do it, because we will not interfere. We will not enter the private bedroom of your space. But in the open area, in the common area, on the streets, you should not be wearing hijab. Why? Because the streets are a secular place. Don't indoctrinate religion into the secular space. If you want to practice religion, practice within the four walls of your home. We will not interfere. That's the form of secularism in France. There's a form of secularism in the United States. Complete non-interference. We will not interfere in your religion. You want to pray to one God or 10,000 gods, doesn't matter. You want to pray or not pray, doesn't matter. We will not interfere. So complete non-interference in United States, that's secularism. Interference in France, so that you don't display your religious symbols publicly, because the public place is a secular place. That is secularism in France. There is secularism in China, because China, they say we are a communist state. And communism is the policy of Karl Marx. And Karl Marx says religion is the opium of the masses. Religion should be destroyed. That is why China ensures that religion is not even practiced. They have a province, the Xinjiang province, or Xinjiang province, as some people pronounce it, where there are the ethnic Uyghurs. Who are predominantly Muslims. They're not allowed to fast during the holy month of fasting. They're not allowed to pray. Because the state is secular, they don't want you to practice religion. Because the state is anti-religion. But India is different. India is unique. Just like India. is secularism in India? Secularism in India is, number one, we will protect all religions equally. And the state will not uphold any religion as the state religion. No religion will be the state religion in India. And this is something contrasting to what happened in our neighborhood. The country was divided in the name of religion. Pakistan emerged as the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, but not India. India stayed secular. Bangladesh became an Islamic Republic. Myanmar, one form of Buddhism, became the state religion. Similarly, in Sri Lanka, one form of Buddhism became the state religion. But India stayed away from its neighbors in upholding the principle of secularism. If secularism means church and state are separate, church will not interfere in the state will not interfere in the church, basically religious places. In United States, it is complete non-interference. In China, it is complete interference in the sense that you can't display religion because we are anti-religion. And in India, we say secularism means principled distance. Principled distance in the sense, number one, we will protect all religions equally. Protect all religions equally in the sense, if there is Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, we will fund that yatra. We will give free tickets to the people, go to that yatra. And if there are people going on a Hajj pilgrimage, we will subsidize them as well. Although that subsidy has now been removed, but there was a time when the subsidy was given for the Hajj as well. Equal protection of the religion in the sense, we will give donation for the construction of a mosque as well, for the construction of a gurdwara as well, for the construction of a temple as well. We will equally protect all religions. And no religion will be a state religion. And secularism also in India is unique. Unique in the sense that we have political parties in the name of religion. Akali Dal, All India Ittihadul Muslimin, or Majlis-e Ittihadul Muslimin of Mr. Owaisi. We had Hindu Mahasabha. We had the Christian parties. That means India is unique. Just like India, because religion is so much intimately associated with the lives of the Indians that you can't take religion out of India or religion out of the psyche of Indians. That is why the constitution maker said we will have a different form of secularism. And what is that different form of secularism? We will equally protect all religions. And at the same time, we will not uphold any religion as the state religion. And at the same time, we will ensure that there is no discrimination. On the grounds of religion. For example, Article 15 of the Constitution, which we will discuss next week, it categorically states that the state shall not discriminate anybody on the grounds of religion. Article 16, for example, it says there shall be equality of opportunity in public employment. When UPSC advertises posts, announces jobs of the civil services examination, there is no discrimination on the grounds of religion. It's not that only Hindus and Muslims can participate, Sikhs and Christians cannot. Anybody can participate regardless of your religion. Article 27, which says the taxes that you and me pay cannot be used for the promotion of a particular religion. For example, what would happen during the time of Aurangzeb or even prior to Emperor Akbar, because Akbar abolished it later? Jizya. It was a tax. primarily on non-Muslims. So if the Mughal Empire wants to protect you, protect your property, you have to pay tax. Such form of jizya cannot be imposed in India. That the state will protect you if the Muslims will pay this tax, if the Christians will pay this tax, if the Buddhists will pay this tax, if the Sikhs will pay this tax. No, that cannot happen because that is prohibited by Article 27. And all these important articles, they uphold the concept of secularism in India, that there is no discrimination on the grounds of religion. That is secularism in India. So what is the nature of the Indian state? Sovereign. You know that. What's the meaning of sovereign? Socialist, secular, democratic, republic. But when we look at this term secularism, in GS paper 2 in polity, we have to just look at the legal aspect of secularism. Then there is a social aspect of secularism. That is something that we will be discussing in GS paper 1, where we will talk about social issues. So secularism, for example, some people say is under assault in India. Why? Because we see majoritarianism emerging in India. When the Prime Minister is openly conducting the puja, when the new parliament complex is to be inaugurated, is that not upholding or promoting one particular religion at the expense of others? When the Rafale jet is to be inducted into the Indian Air Force, the defense minister performs the puja, which is a Hindu ritual. Is that not promoting one particular religion at the expense of others? The rise of majoritarianism and its impact on secularism, that will be the subject matter of GS paper 1, where we'll have to discuss social issues. For example, communalism, regionalism, secularism, society of India, so on and so forth. In GS paper 2, I just have to tell you what is secularism from the legal perspective in India. And that is, the state will not uphold any religion as its state religion. The state will equally protect every religion, and there will be no discrimination on the grounds of religion. So Article 15 makes it clear that the state shall not discriminate only on the grounds of religion. Article 16 makes it clear that all public employment, there should be no discrimination on the grounds of religion. Article 27 makes it clear that there can be no tax specifically for the promotion of a particular religion. All these things make it abundantly clear that what we follow is secularism. And was India secular before 1976? Yes. But before 1976, secularism was implicit in India. Implicit in the sense, although these articles did not say that we are a secular state, but these articles meant that we are a secular state, where there is no discrimination on the grounds of religion. But what was implicit till 1976 became explicit in 1976. That's the only difference. Clear? 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 Shiva Kumar, what's your question, please? NCRTs of 6th and 10th, not important? Not important. Explicit in 1976 because we mentioned it in the constitution that we are secular. That means we became explicit. We openly declared it. Otherwise, previously it was implicit. It was hidden. Secular word was not there, but the idea of secularism was there already. Okay. Now we will look at the last theme that we have to cover from the preamble, which is what are the objectives of the preamble, objectives of the Constitution as mentioned in the preamble. And the first objective is justice. And what sort of justice? Justice in the sense, give dignified treatment to everybody. And what is that dignified treatment? There should be justice in social sphere, in economic sphere, in political sphere. Social justice, for example, there was a time, or when we look at, some people say that in Rig Ved, there is Purusha Sukta hymn, which talks about Chatur Varna system. Varna system in the sense Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Shudras, Vaishyas. There are experts who say that this was a Varna system. This was some sort of division of labor. Division of labor in the sense, in an organization, let's say in our organization, there are teachers. There are those who write the content. There are those who support us operationally. That doesn't mean one is inferior or the other is superior. It only means division of labor. Division of labor in the sense, hands are used to slap, to eat as well. Mind is used to think. Eyes are used to see. That doesn't mean eye is superior to heart or mind is superior to mind is superior to heart, and so on and so on. Every organ is important. It's just division of labor. So just like in that society, there was division of labor, Varna system. That is why Mahatma Gandhi was in favor of Varna system. That is the disagreement that Dr. Ambedkar had with Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was in favor of the Varna system, that there has to be a division of labor in the society. Everybody cannot become a doctor. Some have to be teachers as well. Everybody cannot become a teacher. Some should be there to support others as well, participate in trade. There should be others who will clean the roads as well, whether dry cleaning or manual cleaning, whatever it is, but we need people to clean the roads as well, or we need machines for that. So there has to be division of labor in the society. And that is how those who would teach, those who would do the philosophical work, they were the Brahmins, or they were called Brahmins. Those who would be participating in wars, defending the territory, they would be called Kshatriyas. Those who would participate in the trade activities would be called the Vaishyas. And those who would do the menial jobs, who would support the other three Varnas, they would be called Shudras. But this was division of labor. And then this division of labor became division by birth. So a child born to a Brahmin remained a Brahmin. Child born to a Shudra remained a Shudra. And a Shudra can never become a Brahmin. A Shudra can never take education and become the preacher or the educationist or the teacher. Cannot even read Sanskrit. Then it became discriminatory. And it became discriminatory to such a level that if I was a Dalit, I would walk on the road, I would see the Brahmin coming from the other side or an upper caste coming from the other side, I would jump in the mud. Because my stench would cause pollution to the member of the upper caste. And that is why some people said, some experts say that this entire discrimination was based on these twin concepts of purity and pollution. The dress, the food habits, the drinking habits of the Brahmins are pure. The dress, the food habits, the drinking habits of the Dalits is impure, polluted. So if I'm a Dalit, I would see the member of the upper caste coming from the other side. Even my shadow would cause pollution to them. I would jump in the mud. I cannot spit on the floor. I had to carry a pot around my neck and spit in that pot. I cannot drink from the well, which is meant for the upper castes. I cannot even take cooked food from them. Dr. Ambedkar, who was a Dalit himself, for days he could not drink water in the school. Why? Because the well from which he was allowed to drink water, it was dry. And the other well, which was full of water, he could not drink water from that because that was meant for the upper castes. That was a society. And if that society continues even after independence, then what is the need for independence? If such a society, such a discrimination continues even after independence, then what is the need for this beautiful document called the Constitution? Constitution said in its preamble that our first and the foremost objective is social justice. And that social justice where there will be no discrimination on the grounds of caste, where there will be no discrimination based on these so-called concepts of purity and pollution. This individual is a manual scavenger. Scavenger in the sense there are our septic tanks, manholes. These men, they enter the manholes because we need to manually clean them. They enter into these manholes. These manholes are full of dirt. They eject poisonous gases without any security gear, without any helmet, without any mask, without any gloves, without the protective gear. They enter into these manholes and they inject these poisonous gases and then they die. And all these manual scavengers, these are the members of the Dalit community. Why? Because what was meant to be division of labor became division by birth. That means these members of the Dalits, they will always clean this dirt. Despite ending the menace of manual scavenging, deaths continue. So there is a clash between constitutional objective and the empirical reality. Constitutional objective is we will implement social justice, but the reality is justice is too far even now. But we will discuss that over a period of time. But first, we need to understand what is social justice. Justice for all in social sphere without any discrimination on the grounds of caste or sex. That is the objective of the Constitution. Clear? Let's take a break. It's 7:50. We will meet at 8:05 a.m. See you on the other side of the break. four themes in the preamble. The fourth one, what are the objectives of the Constitution? What are the objectives that we want to achieve through this Constitution? The first is social justice. Second, political justice. What is this political justice? United States of America is considered to be a very progressive society, a liberal society. They've never had a woman president. Hillary Clinton came close to becoming the president of the United States, but was defeated by Donald Trump. They gave voting rights to women very late. Even Britain gave voting rights to women in the 1920s. Even Switzerland gave voting rights to women in 1970s. But India started with this experiment that there should be no discrimination between man and a man or a man and a woman in political sphere. In one single step, in 1950, voting rights were given to all, regardless of their gender, regardless of their age, regardless of their language, regardless of their religion, regardless of their caste. So there was a time when voting rights were given only to those who had property during the colonial period. There was a time when voting rights were given only to the educated class. But in 1950, when the Constitution was enacted, voting rights were given to all. Yes, there was an age limit. Somebody who is an Indian should be above the age of 21 in order to vote in the elections. Later on, this voting age was reduced to 18. There is an age which you have to achieve after which you can contest elections. For example, you should be 25 years in order to contest elections to Lok Sabha or Legislative Assembly. But beyond that, there is no other discrimination. No matter what religion you come from, what caste you come from, what language you speak, what gender you possess, there is no discrimination whatsoever. And that is what we call political justice. Universal adult franchise. Anybody who is an Indian and is above the age of 18 has the right to vote, the right to contest elections. And one classic example of this is Lily Thomas versus Union of India 2013. What is that case? We have a law known as Representation of the People Act 1951. Listen to me carefully. When we will discuss elections, we will discuss this law in great detail, Representation of the People Act 1951. It is this law which governs the conduct of elections in India, whether elections to Lok Sabha, elections to the state legislatures. And there used to be a section, Section 8, Clause 4 of the Representation of the People Act 1951. And what it did, it created a classification. Classification in the sense, ordinary citizen and a legislator. Who is an ordinary citizen? You, me, others. We are not part of the legislature. We are not MLAs. We are not MLCs. We are not MPs of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. Sorry. If, for example, we have committed a crime for which we have been sentenced to 2 or more years in jail, we are disqualified from contesting elections. We cannot contest elections, which means you and me, we are not legislators, we are not members of the parliament, we are not members of the state legislatures, if we have committed a crime for which the court has sentenced us to 2 or more years in jail, we cannot contest elections. We are disqualified from contesting the election. But if there is a legislator, now let's assume I am a legislator, I am a member of the parliament or a member of the state legislature. I have committed a crime for which the court has sentenced me to 2 or more years in jail. I am not disqualified. I can still continue as a lawmaker. I can still continue as a legislator. And I have 3 months. Within 3 months, I have to appeal to a higher court. For example, the district court has said you are guilty, you are sentenced to 2 or more years in jail. I am a legislator. I will not be disqualified. What I have to do, I have 3 months. Within 3 months, I have to approach the high court. If the high court says, no, this sentence is set aside, I will continue as a legislator. If the high court also says, no, you are guilty, you are sentenced to 2 or more years in jail, even then I am not disqualified. What I have to do, I have to approach Supreme Court within 3 months. And only when the Supreme Court says you are guilty and you are sentenced to 2 or more years in jail, I will be disqualified. That means this section 8 clause 4, what it does, it creates a classification. An ordinary citizen, if you have committed a crime for which 2 or more years punishment is given to you, you are disqualified from contesting the election. But if you are a legislator, you are not disqualified. Instead, you are given 3 months window to appeal to a high court. Instead, you are given 3 months window to appeal before the Supreme Court. Matter went to the court. Lily Thomas versus Union of India. Lily Thomas argued before the Supreme Court, my lord, the objective of the Constitution is political justice. Court said yes. My lord, political justice means there should be absence of any arbitrary distinction between man and a man in political affair. What is this arbitrary distinction? Without any logic. What is arbitrary distinction, for example? All the students who are attending this class right now, if I were to say that those who attended this class, joined this class at 6 a.m. till 7 a.m., you cannot ask me any question. But those who joined between 7 to 8, they can ask me 10 questions. And those who join after 8, again, they cannot ask me any questions. This is arbitrary distinction without any logic. What is the logic? To say that those who joined the class right on time, they cannot ask me questions. And those who joined the class midway, they can ask me 10 questions. What is the logic behind this? What is the rationale behind this? What is the thought process behind this? This is illogical. This is arbitrary. Can I still create a distinction? Yes. Can I still create a distinction which is not arbitrary, which is not illogical? Yes, I can. How? If you are from law background, you can ask me only one question. Because you know the law, you may have a doubt here and there, you can ask me one question. But if you are from a science background, or if you are from engineering background, you can ask me 10 questions. I'm creating classification. I'm classifying students. I'm discriminating students, but on some logical grounds, on some valid grounds, on some genuine grounds. Because those who need more protection, those who need more guidance, I will give them more opportunity to ask me questions. This is logical. Lily Thomas argued that this distinction, where you are discriminating between an ordinary citizen and a legislator, both have committed crime. One cannot contest elections, other can contest elections and continue as a lawmaker. This goes against the principal philosophy of the Constitution, which is political justice, the idea of political justice. Supreme Court said, you're absolutely right. This section 8 clause 4 is unconstitutional. Why unconstitutional? Because it creates an arbitrary, illogical distinction between man and a man in a political affair. Now, the moment you are convicted by the court of law, for which you are sentenced to 2 or more years in jail, on the date of your conviction, you will be disqualified. Shri Rahul Gandhi, was convicted by a court in Gujarat for defamation, criminal defamation. On the date of his conviction, he was disqualified. Yes, then he approached the High Court. High Court said, no, you are guilty, remained disqualified. Then he approached the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, yes, we will hear this case. Till that time, you can continue as the lawmaker. That means only after the intervention by the court. Otherwise, on the date of your conviction, you are disqualified. Today's newspaper, when you will read a member of parliament from Lakshadweep who belongs to the NCP, Nationalist Congress Party, he has been disqualified by Lok Sabha because he was convicted by the court of law for some offense for which he was given 10 years in jail. And now he has been disqualified from Lok Sabha. We will discuss his case again when we will discuss the Representation of the People Act. But the point is, preamble tells us the fourth theme that it talks about is what are the objectives of the Constitution. One objective is justice. Justice, social justice, political justice, and economic justice. What is economic justice? There are people who may not be able to get a job, get livelihood opportunities. Why? Because they belong to poor sections of the society. They don't have means for education. Should we leave them to the mercy of God? Or should we give them scholarships? Should we give them pensions? Should we give them wages under Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, MG Narega? Economic justice. During COVID-19 lockdown, when millions lost their lives, when there was a threat to the small entrepreneur, loans were given at cheap rates to these MSME sector, medium, small, and micro enterprises. That is economic justice. Economic justice means those who are old age pension should be given to them. Those who cannot afford insurance, free insurance is provided to them. The state will not turn a blind eye to those who are from marginalized, weaker sections of the society. That is economic justice. So that we can improve the standard of living of the people, so that we can make the life meaningful for all the members of our society. That is justice. That is economic justice. And that is another objective of the Constitution. Another objective is liberty. What is liberty? Freedom. Freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, faith, and worship. That's another idea of a secular state. We will not force you to follow one particular religion. You are free to choose a religion of your choice. You have that liberty, you have that freedom to think whatever you want to think. Write a book, write a novel, make a song, make a movie, draw a cartoon. Whatever you want to believe in, you have that liberty, you have that freedom. That's another objective of the Constitution. Liberty, freedom of thought, belief, faith, worship. You can worship your God. That's another objective of the Constitution. And there has to be equality. Equality in all sphere. We will not discriminate on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth. There should be no inequality in the society. Complete equality, that's the goal. Fraternity. We are a land of diversity. You travel 50 kilometers, you will see another language being spoken. If not another language, at least another dialect used by the people. Diversity is religious. Hindus, Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Parsis, Buddhists, atheists. Different set of people. Diversity is caste. People of different castes. Diversity is there are different tribes. Diversity is different languages being spoken. Diversity is food diversity. Diversity is the clothing that you use. There is so much diversity in this country. From north to south, from east to west, in the central part of India, so much diversity. Yet we are united by oneness. And that oneness is the idea that we are all Indians. How can we implement a sense of brotherhood amongst all the members of our society, despite the fact that we are diverse in our languages, in our religion, in our caste, in our tribal character, in our food, in the way we dress ourselves? There is so much diversity, yet we are united. And we have to ensure, constitution has to ensure that we have that feeling that we are the children of the same soil, we are from the same motherland. That is why constitution says you can travel freely throughout the territory of India. That is why the constitution says you can reside and settle anywhere within the territory of India. That is why there is no ban on the migration of people from one part of the country to another part of the country, because we are the children of the same soil, we belong to the same motherland, we are united by the Indianness. And all of these three things, liberty, equality, fraternity, this was the slogan of the French Revolution. And we have incorporated this from the French Revolution into our constitution. That means our objective is not just justice, social justice, economic justice, political justice. Our objective is liberty, equality, fraternity. And it is through this fraternity that we will ensure dignity of an individual. Everybody should be given a dignified life. And it is through this that we will ensure unity and integrity of India. Integrity of India, listen to me carefully, because this word also was added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Unity means we are united by the sense that we belong to one soil, common motherland, India. We are united. United despite the fact that we are diverse. That is what we call unity in diversity. Tolerance is the second name for this. You may speak a different language, I will speak a different language, yet we are united because we are Indians. You are from a different religion, different caste, different tribe, different dress sense, but we are still different, yet we are united because we are Indians. And unity and integrity. Integrity is very important. Why? Because there was a time there are still times when there are secessionist tendencies. For example, Khalistani movement, as is in the news recently. There was a movement in Punjab where some members of the Sikh community wanted to come out of India, establish a different country for Sikhs known as Khalistan. So it was a secessionist movement. That means you want to secede, you want to come out of India, establish a new country known as Khalistan. Secessionist movement in Jammu and Kashmir. Some section of Jammu and Kashmir want to come out of the Union of India and create a different country, Jammu and Kashmir. Secessionist movement in Nagaland, secessionist movement in Manipur, secessionist movement in Arunachal and in some other parts of Northeast. It was at this time that the Prime Minister of that day, Srimati Indira Gandhi, and the Parliament decided that we need to ensure that the country is integrated together. Integrated together, there should be no opportunity to secessionist tendencies. We have to ensure that this entire country remains the way it is. No part of this territory should come out of the Union of India. That means this entire country should be an integral whole. One part should not come out of the Union of India. And that is the objective of the Constitution. We have to ensure dignity of an individual. We have to ensure that the people of this country remain unity, and at the same time, the territory of India that we have, that should also remain the way it is. It should not, one part of the territory should not come out of the Union of India. That means we have to ensure the integrity of India. It has to remain the way it is. All these are the objectives mentioned in the preamble. These are the objectives that we want to obtain through this constitution. That is preamble. Now, is preamble part of the constitution or not? Normally, when we say that book starts with chapter 1, preface is not part of the book. The real book starts with chapter 1. In the same fashion, is preamble part of the constitution or not? In Berubari Union, 1960, Supreme Court said no, preamble is not part of the constitution. In 1973, in Keshavananda Bharati case, Supreme Court said yes, preamble is part of the constitution. And same thing was reiterated by the Supreme Court in the LIC case, Life Insurance Corporation of India case. But why this difference? 1960 Supreme Court saying preamble is not part of the constitution. A decade later, Supreme Court saying preamble is part of the constitution. Reiterating again in 1996 in LIC case that preamble is part of the constitution. Why this difference? Listen to me carefully. In Berubari Union case, the Supreme Court thought that preamble is the philosophy of the constitution. And preamble is basically not enforceable in any court of law. Not enforceable in a court of law means, for example, fundamental rights, which we will discuss next week. Those are enforceable in a court of law. Enforceable in the sense that if my right to equality has been violated, freedom of speech and expression is violated, right to life is violated, these are my fundamental rights, I can approach the court and the court will protect my fundamental rights. If I'm illegally detained by the police, the court will set me free. If my book has been illegally banned by the government, the court may see that if this book is not a threat, we can order the publication of this book, the selling of this book. So the fundamental rights are enforceable in a court of law. In a sense, if your fundamental rights are violated, you can approach the court. The court will protect, safeguard, and uphold your fundamental rights. But preamble is not enforceable in a court of law. In itself, preamble is not enforceable in a court of law. What does that mean? Preamble is the philosophy. How can we say and tell the court that dignity is not ensured? How can we tell the court that unity and diversity is not maintained? Because these are philosophies. These are objectives. This is the nature of the Indian state. Preamble only tells us what this book is all about. Book is enforceable. Preamble tells us what is the thought process which was going on in the minds of those who drafted this constitution. But this constitution is enforceable. If constitution is violated, you can go to the court. But preamble is just like the philosophy, just like a document, which tells us what this constitution is all about. So in itself, it is not enforceable. You can't go to the court and tell the court that preamble is not being followed, because it's a philosophy. Yeah, constitution, if it is not followed, then you can go to the court. Same logic was used by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said if preamble is like the identity card of the constitution, if the preamble is like the philosophy of the constitution, if the preamble is like the preface of the constitution is enforceable, preamble is not. But later on in Keshavananda Bharati case, Supreme Court said no, preamble is part of the constitution. Why? Because in this case, the government lawyer told the Supreme Court, my lord, do you know how constitution was adopted? Supreme Court said yes. How the constitution was adopted? Please tell us. The government advocate said that one by one, every article of the Constitution was discussed and put to vote. So, okay, should we have right to life or not? What should be the wording of this? There was a thorough discussion in the Constituent Assembly, and then there was voting. Only when the majority people said, yes, right to life should be a fundamental right, right to life became part of the Constitution. That means one by one, every article, every part of the Constitution was thoroughly discussed and then voted upon. And then it became part of the Constitution. Sir, okay. Sir, in the similar fashion, preamble was also discussed. Preamble was also voted upon. In fact, preamble was the last item to be added to the Constitution. Preamble was also discussed. Preamble was also thoroughly discussed. It was voted upon by the Constituent Assembly. In fact, it was the last item voted in the Constituent Assembly. Then preamble became part of the Constitution. So just like any other part of the Constitution was debated, thoroughly discussed, then voted upon, in the same fashion, preamble was also discussed, thoroughly debated, voted, and then it became part of the Constitution. Supreme Court said, if this is true, then preamble is part of the Constitution. And if it is part of the Constitution, which means it can be amended as well, because only Constitution can be amended. And if preamble is part of the Constitution, then Constitution can be amended. Then preamble can be amended. Sir, but sir, I have a confusion. Sir, what is that confusion? Sir, you said preamble is based on the objectives resolution of Pandit Nehru, which was introduced by Pandit Nehru in the Constituent Assembly and adopted by the Constituent Assembly on January 22, 1947. Yes. And now you are saying preamble was the last item added to the Constitution. That means in 1949. Isn't there a discrepancy? No. Objectives resolution is not preamble. Preamble is based on objectives resolution. So the wording of the preamble was changed here and there based on objectives resolution, but objectives resolution is separate. Preamble is separate. Objectives resolution was adopted on 22nd January 1947. Preamble was the last item to be voted upon. So there is a difference. Okay, sir, this much is understood, but why was the preamble last item added to the Constitution? Why wasn't it the first or in the middle way? Why was it the last item? Imagine a situation. We have the entire Constitution, Article 1 onwards, and then we have the preamble. Listen to me carefully. What is preamble? Philosophy of the Constitution. What is preamble? Without looking at the Constitution, if you want to know what is the crux of this Constitution, for that you have to go through the preamble. Preamble is the identity card of the Constitution. Constituent Assembly, the makers of our Constitution, thought that first we will draft the entire Constitution, write the entire Constitution, adopt the entire Constitution, and then see if there are some things mentioned in the Constitution which go against the preamble. Then we can remove them. To ensure that the entire Constitution is in agreement, is in conformity with the preamble. That is why preamble was the last item to be voted upon in the Constituent Assembly. And since preamble was also discussed, voted upon, just like any other article of the Constitution was discussed and voted upon, Supreme Court said in Keshavananda Bharati case, then in the LIC case, that preamble is part of the Constitution. And when it is part of the Constitution, it can be amended as well. Let's look at some of the quick points which can be relevant for your prelims examination. US Constitution was the first one to begin with the preamble. Just like Indian Constitution, US Constitution also begins with "We the people of the United States of America." Preamble is part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Or to put it simply, or to put it better, preamble contains basic structure. Yesterday I told you that there is something known as basic structure. Supreme Court in Keshavananda Bharti case said Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution. Parliament has the power to amend any provision of the Constitution. But Parliament does not have the power to alter what it calls basic structure. No amendment of the Constitution can violate basic structure. And the preamble contains basic structure. How? What does preamble talk about? We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Is preamble part of the Constitution? Yes. That means, can preamble be amended by the Parliament? Yes. But can Parliament change the basic structure? No. That means, can tomorrow Parliament say, we are not sovereign? We will remove this term sovereign from the preamble. No, you can't do that, because sovereign is part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Can tomorrow Parliament say, we will drop this word secular from the preamble? No, you can't do that. Why? Because secularism is part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Can tomorrow Parliament say, we want to change republic into monarchy? We will be a constitutional monarchy instead of a constitutional republic. No, you can't change that, because this is part of the basic structure of the Constitution. But sir, the word socialist and secular was added to preamble in 1976. Does it not violate basic structure? No, it does not. Why? Because you can always, what you can always do, you can enrich preamble. Enrich preamble in the sense, you can add more objectives to the preamble. You can add more nature to the preamble if it is not incompatible with already that is there in the preamble. How? For example, Constitution said in its preamble that we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign democratic republic. These were the only three things mentioned. That means you can't change sovereignty, delete sovereignty. You can't delete democratic. You can't say we will become a dictatorship. You can't change republic, because you can't say we can become a monarchy. But can you enhance this nature of Indian state? Yes. Add secular. Is secular incompatible with democracy? No. Is secular incompatible with republic? No. Is secular incompatible with sovereignty? No. But can you say secular and at the same time Hindu Rashtra or Islamic state? That would be incompatible with the idea of secularism, because secularism means you can't proclaim any religion as the state religion. So by calling this country an Islamic state or a Hindu Rashtra or a Khalistan, you're basically violating secularism. That is not allowed. You can add more objectives, you can add more nature. If it is not incompatible to whatever is already present in the preamble, that you can do, because preamble contains basic structure. And basic structure is something that no amendment of the Constitution can violate. So is preamble part of the Constitution? Yes. US Constitution was the first to begin with the preamble. Preamble contains basic structure, which means you cannot delete anything from the preamble. You can add more things to the preamble without altering the existing things. Preamble aids the legal interpretation of the Constitution when the language is found to be ambiguous. And what is that ambiguity? Aadhaar. A unique 12-digit identification number. All of us have Aadhaar, a unique 12-digit identification number. What makes Aadhaar unique? We give our fingerprint, we give our iris scan. Fingerprint, iris scan of every individual is different. That means every individual's Aadhaar is different. That means it is a unique document. When you give your fingerprint, when you give your iris scan, you also part away with your privacy. How do you part away with your privacy? Listen to me carefully. There are different databases. What is a database? A software, for example, where information is stored. One example of a database is Microsoft Excel, for example. It's a database where your information is stored. Information is stored in different databases. What is that information? For example, this is the database where my medical records are stored. I go to Manipal Hospital, I perform some tests, I meet a doctor. All this is recorded and it is stored on the servers of Manipal Hospital, stored in this database. Clear? This is where my bank records are stored. I have an account with the ICICI, they have my records. This is where my insurance records are stored. This is where my driving license is stored. This is where my SIM card information is stored. I am a subscriber of Airtel, India's largest cellular network after Jio, JGO. Whatever information, SIM card information, who I call, what is the message, everything is stored here. But these are in different databases. They are in different silos separately. Is there a possibility that we can link all this information together? Is there a possibility? If you are a student of computer science, you would know that there is something known as primary key. This primary key can become Aadhaar. Key in the sense, if you gave your Aadhaar number while in your driving license, while taking a SIM card, while booking an appointment with a doctor, while submitting your bank details or opening a bank account, while opening an insurance claim, if in all these instances you are giving your Aadhaar, Aadhaar becomes your primary key. That means you can link all the databases together. And who will monitor you? Government. Because right now the information is stored separately. But if Aadhaar is one common thread in all these databases, then your life becomes as transparent to the government as a contact lens. The government will get to know who are you calling, what are you speaking, where are you traveling. You are booking a ticket on an airline portal. Where are you traveling? What is the bank transaction that you do? Everything becomes transparent to you. And this violates privacy. Because now you are naked in front of the state. The state knows each and every activity of yours. Matter went to the court. K.S. Puttaswamy, who was a former judge of the Karnataka High Court, he filed a case challenging the validity of Aadhaar, saying Aadhaar violates privacy because it can do all these things. Your life becomes as transparent to the government as contact lens. Hence, Aadhaar is unconstitutional. When the matter came to the Supreme Court, the government took a different position altogether because it was challenging the government. The government said there is no such thing as right to privacy. Right to privacy is not a fundamental right. And the government was right. Right to privacy is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. Yes, Article 21, it talks about right to life and personal liberty. But it does not talk about right to privacy. Now, 9 judges of the Supreme Court had to first decide this very simple question as to whether right to privacy is a fundamental right or not. But right to privacy is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. What is the philosophy of the Constitution? Preamble. What is the utility of the preamble? Preamble is not enforceable in any court of law. I told you. In itself, it is not enforceable in a court of law, but Constitution is. But preamble can be used to interpret the Constitution when there is some ambiguity. Supreme Court said right to privacy is indeed a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court was asked, how can you say right to privacy is a fundamental right? Supreme Court said, look at preamble. One of the objectives of the Constitution mentioned in the preamble is that we have to assure dignity of an individual. This dignity gets snatched if there is no privacy. Who am I talking to? Who am I making love to? What am I eating? What am I drinking? That's not the business of the state. Who said this? Supreme Court. But if there is no right to privacy as a fundamental right, that means the state can peep into your bedroom. Because there is no right to privacy as a fundamental right. State can do anything. And if the state is allowed to peep into your bedroom, what will happen to your dignity? Your dignity is gone. But the objective of the Constitution mentioned in the preamble is that we have to assure the dignity of an individual. And this dignity would not be possible unless and until we have the right to privacy. That is why right to privacy is a fundamental right. And Supreme Court was able to do this because preamble has a significance. It is used to interpret when the language is ambiguous. Preamble further, if any power is not given in the Constitution, preamble cannot provide. If any power is not stopped in the Constitution, preamble cannot stop. What does that mean? Is power given to the government or parliament that you can convert democracy into dictatorship? Is this power given to the parliament by the Constitution? No. Can we say preamble gives this power because preamble talks about sovereignty? We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign. So I can take any decision, I can unmake any decision, but not this decision. Because you can't convert democracy into dictatorship. If this power is not given to you, preamble cannot provide you this power. Does Constitution stop you from reasonable classification? If Constitution does not stop, preamble cannot stop. Sir, what is that reasonable classification? One objective which is mentioned in the Constitution is equality. What is equality? No discrimination whatsoever. Every single Indian is to be treated alike. But imagine a situation where there are SCs, STs, OBCs, economically weaker sections of the society, they are different from the aspirants belonging to the general category. SCs, STs, OBCs, economically weaker sections of the society, they are different from the members of the general category. So the state has classified people into two groups: those who require reservation, those who don't need reservation. So although the constitution in its preamble talks about equality, but it does not stop the state from reasonable classification. This classification is not unreasonable. Why? Because throughout the history, members of the SC/ST community have been discriminated. They were denied educational opportunities, job opportunities. But now in the independent India, we have to uplift them. We have to give them more protection. We have to give them reservations so that they can lift themselves. So the state is classifying people, reasonably classifying people, into those who require reservation, into those who do not require reservation. Does constitution stop parliament from making this reasonable classification? No. That means preamble cannot stop. Because preamble, it's not enforceable in a court of law. It's the identity card of the constitution. It's the philosophy of the constitution. The best use of the preamble is it is used to interpret the provisions of the constitution when the language is found to be ambiguous. If there is some power which is given to the parliament, if there is a power which is not given in the constitution, preamble cannot provide that power. If there is a power which is not stopped in the constitution, preamble cannot stop. That completes our discussion of preamble. Any questions, let me know. Then we will jump to part 1 of the constitution. How can we say that preamble is not enforceable in nature? Because articles like 15, 16 promote equality, and this equality is mentioned in preamble. If articles 15 and 16 are enforceable, then indirectly preamble is also enforceable, isn't it? No. Preamble in itself is not enforceable. But the constitution is enforceable. Constitution talks about article 15 and 16. So those articles are enforceable, not the preamble. Can a person who got released from prison after 10 years contest elections? If I'm sentenced to jail for 10 years, during these 10 years, I cannot contest election. Once I'm released, after my release, for another 6 years, I cannot contest elections. After my release, once 6 years is over, then I can contest elections. Ultimately, right to privacy is part of Article 21. Yes. Can Parliament repeal the Constitution? No. Parliament is created by the Constitution. So how can a body which is created by the Constitution repeal the Constitution itself? That cannot happen. Preamble reflects the principles of the Constitution and thus can be called the spirit of the Constitution. Yes. Does secularism stop officials from practicing their personal religious beliefs? Absolutely not. Can anyone vote after coming from prison? Yes. Sir, the preamble is amended. Yes, amended once in 1976. Persons lodged in jails cannot vote. No. Can preamble be removed? Simple thing, my dear. Preamble contains basic structure. Basic structure cannot be removed, so preamble cannot be removed. Preamble is part of the constitution. Does that mean preamble also is enforceable? Preamble is part of the constitution in a sense that preamble can be amended to enrich it, but that doesn't mean it is enforceable because philosophies cannot be enforced. Okay, let's look at part 1 of the constitution, union and its territory. And here we will have to discuss articles 1 to 4. But you don't have to remember the article numbers, just understand the concept. You don't have to remember what is article 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. Just understand the concept. Article Part 1 of the Constitution talks about union and its territory. Union, the central government, and its territory. Or should we say, what is the territorial strength of India? As of now, we have 28 states and we have 8 union territories. Union territories will be discussed separately when we will talk about this chapter, union territories. Here we will focus on states. Clear? Why? Because we can't complete anything in single go. We have to look at things one by one. We'll discuss union and its territory now. Union territory, we will discuss separately in a separate chapter called union territory. When the constitution was being debated, was being drafted, there was a thorough discussion on what should be the name of this country. Article 1 says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. First, we will look at India, that is Bharat. Then we will look at what is this term, phrase known as the Union of States. When the Constituent Assembly was meeting, debating, discussing, there was also a question on nomenclature. What should we be? What should we name this newly independent country? Some said, let's stick to India because that is how we are known world over. Let's stick to India. Others said India is the name given to us by the colonizers. So we should not call this country India because we have now come out of colonialism. We should stick to this name Bharat because Bharat is the ancient name of India. Others said, why Bharat? Why not Hindustan? They said, no, Hindustan is the name given to us by the Persians and the Arabs. So we should not call this country Hindustan. Others, they were deeply influenced by USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. They said we should name this country in a similar fashion. We should call this country Union of Socialist States of India or Union of Socialist Secular States of India. So there was a lot of debate on what should be the nomenclature, what should be the name of this country. Others said we should call this country Jambudvip, the land of the Jambu tree. That's how we were known in the past as well. But ultimately, a compromise was reached so that modernity and tradition can go hand in hand. So that those who believed in the modern name and those who believed in the ancient name, they can be reconciled together. And that is why Article 1 of the Constitution, which talks about the name of this country, calls it India, that is Bharat. That means both the names are correct. That means both the names can be interchangeably used. India, that is Bharat. originally the constitution was in Hindi as well as English. That means we had the Hindi copy of the constitution, we had the English copy of the constitution as well. But over a period of time, constitution got amended. More articles got added, some articles got deleted, some schedules got added, some parts got added. Now the question before the government was, all these amendments should be made in the Hindi version as well. And this Hindi amended version of the constitution should have the same status as that of the English constitution. Ultimately, constitution was amended, and the Hindi translation of the constitution was also given the same status as that of the English constitution. And there, Hindi constitution says, Bharat, Atharth, India. That means in the English version of the constitution, primacy is given to the English word, India. That is Bharat. But in the Hindi version of the constitution, primacy is given to the Hindi word Bharat, or Sanskrit word Bharat, Atharth, which means India. That means it doesn't matter whether you call this country India or Bharat, both are the names of this country. In fact, there was a petition filed by somebody from Madhya Pradesh in the Supreme Court. My lord, I have a petition, public interest litigation. And we will discuss what is a public interest litigation when we will discuss Supreme Court. What is your litigation? What is your case? Sir, I want Supreme Court to issue directive to the central government that we should call this country only India, only Bharat, not India. The Supreme Court said, what rubbish. We are dismissing your petition. Don't come to us with these frivolous petitions, useless petitions. Come to us for solving the problems of corruption in the society, illiteracy in the society, lack of educational opportunities in this country. Don't come to us with these emotional issues. We cannot issue directive to the central government. Because Article 1 is clear. India, that is Bharat. Bharat, Atharth, India. Whether you call India or Bharat, that is your problem. But now something has happened. When the G20 summit was held in Delhi recently, the invitation from the president says, invitation from the president of Bharat. Mr. Modi went to Indonesia to attend the ASEAN India Summit. ASEAN is an organization of 10 countries known as Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And there he was referred to as the Prime Minister of Bharat. Now people saw that, is there any way or is there any objective that now the government wants to change the name of this country from India to Bharat? And they allege that maybe it is because the opposition bloc is known as the India bloc. Why? Because opposition political parties such as the Congress, such as the Communist Party, such as the Trinamool Congress, Samajwadi Party and others, Rashtriya Janata Dal, JDU, they have decided to come together and they call this bloc as India. And that is why the government wants that this name India should be removed. Instead, we should call this country Bharat. For that, we don't need constitutional amendment. India, that is Bharat, both are the official names of this country. So both can be used. But if you want to remove the name India, for that constitutional amendment is required. And you also need to tell United Nations that we have officially changed the name of our country from India to Bharat. So you have to apply before the nations, before the United Nations, that we have changed our name. Just like Turkey did recently. Turkey, they changed the name of their country. They petitioned, they sent a representation to United Nations that we have formally changed the name of our country, called as Turkey instead of Turkey. Same goes with India as well. If we want to drop the name India, for that we require a constitutional amendment. We have to amend the constitution. Otherwise, we can use both the terms, India as well as Bharat. But if we want United Nations to also refer to us only as Bharat, For that, we have to give them a representation after we have officially changed the name of our country. But be that as it may, that's the political matter. Let's go back to the legal matter, the polity matter. Article 1 of the Constitution says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. We have two names for this country. Why? Because there was a lot of debate in the Constituent Assembly as to what would we call this newly independent country, India or Bharat or any other name. And ultimately it was a compromise was reached. Both are the names of this country. But India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. When we say union of states, let's go back to the discussion we had yesterday. A constitution can be a unitary constitution. Constitution can be a federal constitution. What is Indian constitution? If Indian constitution was federal, then Article 1, Clause 1 would have mentioned India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states. But since Article 1, Clause 1 says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, that means Constitution accepts that we are a unitary constitution. But Dr. Ambedkar, he said India is a federal constitution. Also, somebody pointed out, Ravi Teja pointed out, President of India is mentioned, President of Bharat is not mentioned in the Constitution. You're absolutely right. Because only in Article 1, Clause 1 do we mention India, that is Bharat. In every other article, for example, Article 52, it says there shall be a President of India. So there can only be a President of India. Clear? Article 53 says all executive powers are vested in the President of India. But that is in the English version of the Constitution. What is in the Hindi version of the Constitution? Because that is also the authoritative text. Bharat ka Rashtrapati. That means both terms can be used. Okay. Dr. Ambedkar said ours is a federal constitution. But I have used the term union of states and not federation of states for two reasons. Which are these two reasons? Reason number one, India is not the result of an agreement between states no state has the right to secede from the Union of India. Article 1 to Article 4 comes under Part 1 of the Constitution known as Union and its territory. Clear? We have 28 states, we have 8 union territories. Union territories we will discuss separately in another chapter. Here we will talk about union and its territory, which talks about states only. Clear? Article 1, Clause 1, it says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And why India, that is Bharat? Now that is clear. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. It gives us a sense that Constitution accepts that ours is a unitary constitution. Because if it was a federal constitution, then the term used would have been India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states. But since we use the term India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, that means we accept that ours is a unitary constitution. But Dr. Ambedkar disagrees. Dr. Ambedkar said, no, ours is a federal constitution. Ours is a federal polity. But I've used the term union of states and not federation of states for two reasons. Reason number one, India is not the result of an agreement between states. What does that mean? Which is the oldest federal constitution of the world? United States of America. On the world map, where is the United States of America? North America. Clear? This entire area was under the English occupation, was under the British Empire, because Britain, France, these were the biggest colonizers of their time. Majority of the Asia, Africa, the Americas, they were under the control of these two empires. But be that as it may, there were these areas in North America which were under the control of the British Empire. And there were basically 13 British colonies. Was India a British colony? Yes. Similarly, in Northern America, there were 13 such colonies of the British Empire. And now these 13 British colonies, they decided to revolt against the British Empire. Why? Because they wanted independence. And that is what we call, which you will discuss and study in world history, American War for Independence. That means these 13 were the British colonies. Now they revolted, American War of Independence. They revolted against the British. Now these 13 British colonies liberated themselves, declared themselves free. Now these 13 British colonies, these are 13 independent sovereign countries. But these 13 countries, they now decide to come together. They say, why don't we come together and create a United States of America? But if we come together to create United States of America, what sort of government do we follow? What should be the role of individual state? What should be the powers of the individual state? And what should be the power of this new entity that we will be creating, the Union, the center of United States? For that, there were agreements. And ultimately, these 13 independent countries, which were previously British colonies, they decided to come together at Philadelphia. And they gave themselves a constitution in 1787. And this constitution got implemented in 1789, enacted in 1789. That means United States of America was not a political entity. There was no such thing as United States of America. United States of America was created, was born when there was an agreement. When these 13 colonies, previous colonies, ex-colonies, when these 13 independent countries decided to come together, enter into an agreement, and through that agreement was born a nation, a country, a state, an entity known as the United States of America. Dr. Ambedkar said, if I use the term India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states, it might get a sense that India as a political entity was created when these states decided to enter into an agreement to create India. It didn't happen. India was already there. But Dr. Ambedkar, there were 562 princely states. When you look at the colonial period, during the British period, there was India, but then there were princely states as well, those were away from India, away in the sense they were out of the fold of India. Princely states such as, which were ruled by the princes, for example, Hyderabad, for example, Baroda, for example, Mysore, for example, Jammu and Kashmir, for example, Patiala, so many princely states. These princely states joined India. So can we not say that there was an agreement? through which these princely states joined India. Should we not then call India as a federation of states? Dr. Ambedkar said there is a difference. When these 13 colonies declared independence, they decided to come together, enter into a treaty, enter into an agreement to create United States of America. So through that agreement, they created USA. India was already there. It was not created. India was already there. And now these princely states, they have the option of joining India, merging with India. That is why I will use the term union of states so that people are not confused. That India is because an agreement was signed to create India by these states. So India is not the result of an agreement between states. And number two, no state has the right to secede, to come out of the Union of India. You and me have a treaty. You and me have an agreement. Or let's say the 10 of us have an agreement. After 10 years, I will say I'm coming out of this agreement. I'm seceding from this agreement. I'm breaking away from this group. It's possible. So in a federation, if it was because of an agreement, it may also mean that at one point in time, one state, they will come out of the arrangement. They will back out of this treaty. That is something that we will not allow in India. In India, no state can come out of the Union of India. This country has to be integral. That is why I have used the phrase India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Which means there are two names to this country, India and Bharat, and we call this country Union of States and not Federation of States. That doesn't mean we are not a federal polity. We are not a federal constitution. Our constitution is federal. But we've used the term Union of States for two reasons. Because one, India is not the result of an agreement between states, and no state has the right to come out, to secede from the Union of India. Is that clear? And this term, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, excludes union territories. Excludes union territories. Why? Because what is federal polity? In federal constitution, there are some characteristics. What are the characteristics? Dual government. One government at the center, one government in the state. Distribution of powers. Some powers given to the center, some powers given to the states. Schedule 7 of the constitution, something we discussed yesterday. This federal relationship, union shares only with the 28 states that we have. Because in 28 states, we have dual government. We have distribution of powers. Union territories are directly under the control of the center. In Lakshadweep, there is no chief minister, there is no legislative assembly, there is no dual government, there is no distribution of power. Center makes laws for Lakshadweep. Center makes laws for Ladakh. Center makes laws for Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Center makes laws for Chandigarh. Yes, there are exceptions. Exceptions such as Delhi, exceptions such as Puducherry, exceptions such as Jammu and Kashmir. But that is something that we will discuss in a separate chapter known as Union Territories. But here, just keep in mind, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And this phrase states, this term states, does not include union territories, because union territories, because they don't share federal relationship with the union. Because they don't share federal relationship with the union, because there is no distribution of powers, there is no dual government. That is why union territories are separate. but in Indian states are integrated by agreements. Okay, so there is one question by Anju, and the subject matter expert has given a wrong answer, which I would like to flag. Anju says, sir, but Indian states are integrated by agreements like instrument of accession. Then how can we say there is no agreement between the states? And the answer given by the subject matter expert is that instrument of accession related to Kashmir only, which is not true. Every princely state which joined India signed the instrument of accession. Every princely state, whether it is Baroda, whether it is Hyderabad, whether it is Junagadh, whether it is Patiala, every princely state which joined Union of India signed this instrument of accession. But India was already there. India was not created through this agreement. They only joined India. That is why we do not use the term federation of states. Is that clear? So the term India is not covering UTs. My dear, the term states here does not cover UTs. India includes union territories. So doesn't Bharat ka Rashtrapati in Hindi constitution is gender biased? Yes, but look at the entire constitution. He, she is never used. Look at the laws that have been passed. He. So by that logic, we are all patriarchal. Okay. Article 1, Clause 2. We are still discussing Article 1, and in Article 1, we have three clauses. Article 1, Clause 1, which says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Article 1, Clause 2, which says the states and territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule. What is a schedule? It's an explanatory memorandum of an article. If an article requires more explanation, we add this explanation at the end of the constitution in the form of a schedule. Why? The names of the states and territories thereof. If instead of first schedule, we had to mention the names of all the states and territories here, then Article 1, Clause 2 would have said we have to specify 28 states and the names of 8 union territories and their territory as well. That means they are spread as well. We had to mention in Article 1, Clause 2 itself, which would mean that Article 1, Clause 2 would become very bulky, would become very lengthy, because lots and lots of details are there. To prevent this from happening, if an article requires more explanation, instead of adding this explanation in the text of that article itself, we add this explanation in the form of a schedule at the end of the constitution. Schedules are part of the constitution, but these are explanatory memorandum of an article. Article 1, Clause 2. The names of states and territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule. If this first schedule was not there, then this article would have read, the states and territories thereof are specified below. And below we will have to mention 28 states, 8 union territories and their areas. So this entire article would become very bulky. Maybe the members of the Constituent Assembly thought, even then, that lean is in. We should have as shorter, as crisper articles as possible. If an article requires more explanation, we will add the explanation at the end of the Constitution in the form of a schedule. For example, this is the first schedule. Jammu and Kashmir. What is the territory of Jammu and Kashmir? What is the territory of Nagaland? What is the territory of Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Manipur? All these details are mentioned in the first schedule of the constitution. So, Article 1 says, number 1, Article 1, Clause 1, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Article 1, Clause 2, the states and territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule. That means we have 12 schedules. First schedule we have now encountered. That means the names of the states as well as union territories is mentioned where? Is mentioned in the first schedule of the constitution. Why not in the article itself? Because then article would become very bulky and then lean is not in. That is why we have added the explanation towards the end in the form of a schedule. Clear? Sir, once again explain indestructible union of destructible states. I can't explain it once more because I did not even explain it once. I will explain it tomorrow when we will discuss Article 3 of the Constitution. Why we apply at UN for changing a name of our own country? Not changing the name of our country. We change the name of our country on our own. But then you have to inform somebody. It's like I have changed my name. Why should I inform the college authorities I've changed my name? Because the certificate has to change. On the certificate, the name has to change. So you can't be arrogant. No, I have changed my name. I will not tell anybody. I don't need anybody's permission. It's not about permission. You change your name. Nobody can stop you from changing your name. But then how do you want others to call you? You have to inform them. So that is only a formal process. Can we change the name of our country now? Can? Yes. Why not? What is the legal age of contesting election? If you want to contest Lok Sabha election, 25, Assembly election, 25, Rajya Sabha election, 30, President's election, 35. Does changing name India into Bharat need constitutional amendment? India, that is Bharat. It's clear. Both can be used. But if you want to remove India and keep only Bharat, it requires a constitutional amendment. But maybe then Supreme Court will say even the name India is part of the basic structure of the constitution. So you can't even change the name of this country. Or you can't even use only Bharat and not India. Panchayat elections are not conducted by election commission. Panchayat election are conducted by state election commission. And we will discuss that in panchayats. Sir, how about changing it to Hindustan? Nobody is asking it to be changed to Hindustan. So why do you want it to be changed to Hindustan? Sir, please take my question. Organizing the Kumbh Mela by Government of India is against the spirit of secularism. Please tell. No, it's not against the spirit of secularism. The government is not organizing Kumbh Mela. The government is facilitating Kumbh Mela. Just like the government is facilitating pilgrimage to Hajj or pilgrimage to other sacred cities. While campaigning for elections, politicians talk in favor of one religion. Is it not violating secular India? It is, but they cleverly word it in such a manner that it is not violative of anything. Because in 1998, a judgment was given by the court, by the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice was Justice J.S. Verma. The judgment was Manohar Joshi versus Election Commission of India. Supreme Court said Hindutva is not a religion. Hindutva is the way of life. So if somebody is asking for votes in the name of Hindutva, it is not violative of secularism, it is not violation of the Representation of the People Act. Okay, that is it for today. We will meet again tomorrow, 6 o'clock in the morning. We will discuss Article 1 in its entirety. Then we will complete Union and its territory chapter. And hopefully, we will get to start citizenship as well. Please don't miss tomorrow's lecture. See you tomorrow, 6 o'clock in the morning. Till then, have a great time. Bye bye. Stay safe.